This video will discuss how students earn grades in Algebra 1. What we know from experience and research is that students do not learn well when they feel anxiety. We know from years of time in the classroom and from some very good books that when students feel anxiety, they really can't internalize anything. They really can't remember anything. We also know from the research of Carol Dweck that students learn better when they have a growth mindset. When they're not afraid to experience new things and make mistakes, then they see that those new experiences and those mistakes can actually be valuable learning experiences. As teachers in Algebra 1, after doing this research and talking with other experienced professionals, we've decided to assess more often over smaller chunks of content, and in addition to that, we allow students retakes if needed. Here's the thing about testing over a smaller chunk of content. There might only be 6 or 8 questions on a test, and if you get 1 wrong out of 8, then you know a lot more than you don't. However, on a traditional scale, a 7 out of 8 is automatically in the B range, and that doesn't really seem fair. So we came up with a new idea. Instead of assessment grades being a percent or a letter, we are going to describe them with the words that describe what students know and are able to do. These are the words and the abbreviations that we'll use to describe student proficiency. The PowerSchool won't let me put in words or letters like SP. It requires teachers to use a numeric code. So what you will see in PowerSchool is a 4 for strong proficiency, which would indicate that a student's test was somewhere between 86 and 100%. They can still get 1 wrong and get a very good grade. A 3.4 would indicate basic proficiency, which is between 71 and 85%. The next band is between 60 and 70%, which we're going to call weak proficiency, and you would see a 2.8 in PowerSchool. If you see a 2.4, that means their score was approaching proficiency somewhere between 50 and 59%. And if you see a 2, that indicates inadequate understanding, and I believe we can all agree that less than 50% is inadequate. Why is this better than a traditional grading scale? Here's a sample assessment. The red check marks indicate the questions that the student answered correctly. There are 6 out of 8 questions right. On a traditional scale, this would mean 75%. However, in this class, it would be in the range between 71 and 85%, and we're going to call that a score in the range of basic proficiency. In PowerSchool, you will see 3.4 out of 4. This does not indicate that there were 4 questions or 4 points possible and the student scored 3.4 out of 4. It means that the score was somewhere between 71 and 85%. So a 6 out of 8, 75%, would look like 3.4 out of 4 in PowerSchool. PowerSchool then will record the grade as 85% because that's what 3.4 out of 4 is. You'll notice that if the grade is anywhere between 71 and 85%, it rounds up to the top of that interval. On the other hand, if you see 100% in PowerSchool, a 4 out of 4, this does not mean that the student scored 100%. It means that their score was somewhere between 86 and 100%. Every grade rounds up to the top of that interval for whatever level of proficiency it is. Some people might ask, is this grade inflation? And I don't think so. Proficiency grading is fair, considering that a student's entire grade in algebra is based on assessments. There are no homework assignments, no participation, no projects, no extra credit counting toward their grade. They're not turning anything in on Schoology. It is only assessments that they do by paper and pencil in class. If we do ask students to turn in an assignment on Schoology, it will be to show effort and so that we can diagnose trends in student understanding, but not for points and not for a grade. There's more good news. There are retakes. A student who scores strong proficiency does not need to reassess. A student who scores basic proficiency can keep their score or choose to reassess and try for an SP. These are the students who want A's. A student scoring less than basic proficiency should reassess. Reassessment is one way to reflect a growth mindset. You don't do well the first time, that's fine. Learn from your mistakes, do some practice, and try again. Retakes happen in the following way. Students will get back their assessments on pass-back day, which will almost always be the day right after a test. And then they can do test corrections. It's an opportunity to look at the answer keys, all of which are published, ask questions, and learn from their mistakes. Test corrections are required to be able to reassess. Test corrections follow a specific format. It is not just copying the answer from the answer key down onto your piece of paper. It is much more than that. You have to be able to show how to do the problem correctly. You have to be able to describe how to do the problem correctly. Instructions for what to do are in Schoology. Test corrections should be completed in class on Pass-Back Day or turned in at the beginning of class the next day. In addition to that, students should complete a reassessment practice prior to attempting the reassessment. Doing the test corrections is like watching game film, and then the reassessment practice is then going out and practicing so that you don't make the same mistakes again for the next time you have to do it well. Students will be given an answer key. They have to check their work on the reassessment practice, correct it, and ask questions about what they don't understand. And this needs to be done at least one day before the reassessment. Reassessments will take place during class on reassessment day, which is usually 4 or 5 school days after the tests are handed back. The reassessment grade is the one that's kept in the grade book, even if it is lower. I know this is difficult for some people to understand why that's true, but what we know from experience is that if we do not have this caveat, then students treat the reassessment like it's a video game, like they're just going to try again and hope for the best. They don't take it as a serious opportunity to improve their grade. However, if a student can show that they have really done their best effort to try and improve their grade by completing not only the test corrections, but also the reassessment practice and checking it and correcting it on time, then we will record the grade that is the best grade, regardless of whether or not they do better on the reassessment. Giving students a choice like this gives them ownership over their learning and achievement. There is an assessment timeline that's published in Schoology, and you could absolutely get a paper copy to hang on your refrigerator if you want to. It looks complicated when you look at it from afar, but if you just follow the steps one by one vertically down the page, it's really not that difficult. Sometimes students will say, I didn't know that was due, or I didn't know how to do it, or I didn't know when I had to turn it in, and this is just not true. These expectations and these due dates are published in Schoology, they are posted in class, and they are discussed verbally in class. The only students who don't know what to do and when they should do it are students who either want to avoid responsibility or who aren't paying attention. This is the only thing that I will ask for to be turned in this year that is really worth points. It's worth points to be able to get the best grade you possibly can on your reassessment. Once a quarter, there will be a comprehensive growth assessment. This assessment will cover all of the topics studied since the beginning of the semester. This sounds like one of those big anxiety-producing tests, but don't worry, we will separate into smaller chunks, and we will allow retakes on those smaller chunks. Proficiency grades turn into letter grades at the end of the quarter. This is a sample quarter grade calculation. You can see that this student scored weak proficiency on the functions test, strong proficiency on the linear models basic assessment, basic proficiency on the next test, and then on that CGA they scored basic proficiency on both of the sections. You add up the points possible, get the points earned, 17 out of the points possible, 20, and then you do a traditional grade calculation, which would come out to a B. Assessments have all kinds of different questions on them. There's show your work, graph, solve this equation. There might be multiple choice, but we're not grading the letter that they choose, we're grading their explanation for why they chose it. Short answer, a little bit of writing, lots of different kinds of questions. The reassessments measure the exact same skills as the assessment, but with different equations or scenarios. If the student is struggling, please have them go to homework help Tuesdays or Thursdays after school in the Media Center. It says here that busing is available, but I'm not sure if that's still true. It starts later on in September. And please, if you need to contact your child's teacher, we welcome the opportunity to meet with you. Thank you for your attention and your consideration, and your partnership in helping your students do the best they can this year.